See this picture? It's my family. They drive me crazy. They infuriate me. They drive each other crazy, and they make each other angry, and they even embarrass me. And they embarrass each other quite frequently, I'm sure. But the truth about them is that I suspect they love each other, and I really do love them. And the other truth is that I know that if ever we were a family in crisis, these people would come together and we would be able to face anything. Okay, so I'm talking about my family today because I have brought 3 really fabulous books that I want to share with you. These 3 books are very, very diverse. However, they have a common thread, and that is that they're all about families that are in crisis. The first book is Hey Kiddo by Jarrett J. Krzyzewska. The second book is Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. And the third book is Refugee by Alan Gratz. So, let's get started. The first book that I want to tell you about is called Hey Kiddo, and it's by Jarrett J. Krzyzewska. I've been practicing Krzyzewska. It's the story of the man who wrote these books. He's a graphic artist and he writes graphic novels. And what he's done is he's written his own autobiography. He tells the story of his life, which was not an easy one. He started out with living with his mother, who was a single parent, and things didn't go well. So he was adopted by his parents, his grandparents, and ended up being raised by his grandparents. And his mother had a heroin addiction, and so she was in and out of his life, and not a real reliable, constant figure in his life. It's a really great story. Let me tell you what I love about this book. First of all, it's a graphic novel. I never had encountered, until I read this one, a book that is an autobiography that's written in a graphic novel format, but it's really powerful and it's interesting, and while the story sometimes is sad and painful to read, the format, the graphic novel, makes it such a page turner to get to see him transform his life into his drawings. I really enjoyed that. The next thing I loved about this book is that at the end of every chapter, he used wallpaper that he found from his grandmother's house, and he used it as a background, and he shows artifacts, actual artifacts from his life at the end of every chapter, and they always correlate with what's happened in the chapter. And the third thing I love about this book, this author had a really terrible, just crappy childhood, and he could have made terrible choices along the way, and he didn't. He ends up turning out really well. So I enjoyed this book, and I highly recommend it. Hey Kiddo. All right, the second book I have to tell you about today is called Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. I really enjoyed this book. It's a story about a young boy who lives in a rough neighborhood. In his neighborhood, there are 3 rules. Don't cry, don't snitch, and you get revenge whenever you need to. What's happened is his older brother has been shot on the street, and he goes back into his room and he finds in the desk in between their beds a gun that his brother has stored there. And he gets the gun with the intent of going and finding the guy that he believes killed his brother so that he can get revenge. He gets on the elevator of his apartment building, and over the course of 2 minutes, he has conversations with 5 ghosts, 5 different ghosts from his past. It is fabulous. It's a gripping tale. Now, let me tell you the things I love about this book. First of all, it is fiction, but it's written in free verse. That means it's like written in poems throughout the book. So it appears to be a really fast and easy read. Even if you don't enjoy verse, it's hard to put down. It's written so easily. If you do enjoy poetry and verse, this book is a treat, because if you enjoy looking for figurative language and all those things your English teachers talk about, figurative language, symbolism, it's all in there. So it makes it a really fun book. Sad, but fun. The next thing I love about this book is that there are very few words, but it is an unbelievably powerful book. I think the average novel has over 50,000 words in it. This one has maybe 14,000. So there aren't that many words, but they're used so powerfully and poetically. It's amazing. It's really impressive. And the third thing I love about this book, what really sold me on this book, the ending. I cannot be a plot spoiler, but let me tell you, the ending is so good that when I finished this book, I went to my son's room and handed it to him and said, "Oh my gosh, you've got to read this book because I want to know what you think of the ending." So read this one, Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. Right, the third and final book for today is called Refugee, and it's written by Alan Gratz. This book is historical fiction. It tells the story of 3 different families in 3 totally and completely different time periods. The first family is told from the point of view of Joseph. His family is living in Germany in the year 1939, World War II. Joseph is Jewish, and he and his parents and his younger sister Ruth get on a boat and they have visas to go to get into Cuba. So they get on a boat and they sail towards Cuba. And I'm going to do a little plot spoiling here. When they get to Cuba, Cuba won't let them in. And so they have this horrible refugee experience. So that's the first story in this book. The second ongoing story in the book is that of Isabel. And it's set in 1994. She is a little girl, or a young lady, I should say, in Cuba, and things are not going well there. Fidel Castro is the leader of their country, and there literally is not enough food in the grocery stores for them to buy. They are starving because there's not enough food. One evening, Fidel Castro declares that, after a riot, that anybody who wants to leave Cuba can. So Isabel goes and she trades her beloved trumpet for enough gas and she brings the gas to her next door neighbor's house. They have built just a boat out of scraps, and they take the boat to the beach. They get in the boat. It has a motor, and the neighbor family and Isabel's family set off for the United States. Isabel's mom is pregnant. There's, I believe, 9 people in the boat. It's quite an adventure. It's a harrowing adventure. The third family that the story is about is set in 2015, and it's Mahmoud, and he's a little boy, or I guess I should say a young man, who lives in Syria. His town, he's in Aleppo, and his home is bombed. And so he and his younger brother and younger sister and his 2 parents flee Aleppo. Initially, they flee by car, but then they end up having to go across countries on foot. And their refugee experience it's harrowing. It's unreal that this could happen to human beings in our lifetime. Anyway, all of these 3 stories come together at the end, like in the final chapters. You learn how all 3 of these families actually are related and how they're all interconnected. Let me tell you what I loved about this book. The first thing is that it is based on actual events. And the characters, while they're not real characters, they're based on real people. And it makes the book so much more powerful to me. The next thing I love about this book is that every chapter ends with a cliffhanger. And these cliffhangers, it jumps from character to character, and the cliffhangers are so suspenseful that sometimes if I knew I had to stop reading, I didn't read to the end of the chapter because I didn't want to get to the cliffhanger, because then I wouldn't be able to put the book down. It's amazing. The third thing I love about this book is that a lot of times I think when you're reading novels these days, everything ends sunshine and rainbows. And this book, while it has a satisfying ending, It's full of tragedy and very real tragedy. It's worth reading. Okay, so to wrap it up, the first book was Hey Kiddo, autobiography about a fabulous graphic artist. Really good. It's a graphic novel. The second book was Long Way Down, the boy who has to decide whether to avenge his brother's death. It's pretty good. Talks to ghosts in elevators. You can't pass that up. Or Refugee by Alan Gratz. Families fleeing terrible situations. If you're interested in reading a story about a family in crisis, I highly recommend one of these 3 books.